Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. We have a video for everyone here about the heroes we think, I guess the top 5 heroes we think that you should be practicing in the off season that will either get directly better or will have a nice place in heavy hitters. This is
hmm
mainly because at the moment there's only been like one or two events. Icelander is gone, obviously Lexi is gone, so there's been a bit of a shift in the meta being whatever you want to play apparently.
Yeah.
But it's only going to last so long. So I'm joined by my co-creator, co-commentator, co-caster, co-compatriot Rob on the bottom here.
Hello.
And by no means, like if you have a like if you're playing Vincent since day one, keep playing Vincent. My dear fellow player here. This is just for, let's say you were a Lexi main or an Icelander main or something, and you're looking for a new deck to play, or you want to experiment, try some different decks. These are the decks we think will be the best positions coming out of the gate. So
Yeah,
without
exactly.
further ado,
All right. You want to start us off with the first hero?
Sir Bolton, Breaker of Dawn. Everyone thought this hero was a meme, but apparently when you give this hero like 10 sets of support, and it's not actually 10. When you give this hero
It's probably
when you
coming
give
on
the
third at
hero
this point.
yeah, when you give the hero enough support, it ends up being pretty decent. And my good friend and teammate Yukili Bender and Ellie Bird obviously showed everyone that you can top 8 with this hero coming out of nowhere here. Breaker of Dawn. Before I go into it, it's another point is this hero is a light warrior hero, by the way, so it actually might get even more indirect support from the warrior class, which is pretty funny.
Hopefully it
So
will, yeah.
yeah, look out for that. But we're talking about Bolton right now. So there's a couple key cards that he got over the last couple sets that really kind of push him over the edge as like a premier aggressive deck that can do quite
hmm
well. So Beaming Bravado is a fairly innocuous card, but as we know from Flesh and Blood, the rare cards are actually usually the most powerful cards. And what this let you do is very simply help you with your mid to late game quite a bit, in addition to just being a very good uh, a very good charge card, very good opening charge card, right? So if a yellow card is charged, you get your +1, so it becomes a 0 for 4,
hmm
and then that charge card you can immediately Bolton and you can Raiden, so it becomes a 2 card 7 essentially, and a 2 card 7 is actually quite good, especially into those heavier decks with a lot more armor that can't really deal with these chip games. So we're
hmm
talking about decks like Bravo and decks that really either aren't able to throw back as much value with those 2 card hands, or just straight up can't afford it when you get into the weeds of the game. So that's kind of one of the cards that stood out to me, especially it was taken to quite a bit of length as far as the chip damage you were able to get, because usually leak one and then you have to give another card to Raiden. And with Bolton's ability giving +1 to that, sometimes you sometimes you just end up getting so much free damage that it just goes over the edge here. But the next card
hmm
we'll talk about here is Lumen Ascension. Is
Classic.
still really good.
Yeah.
And the key is that people only saw Lumen Ascension before for the combo, the Sabers combo, but now with Raiden, you can essentially tutor this card with your other majestic, right? So you can tutor this card and bring it out, and then you swing Raiden twice with Bolton. Gaining back life is quite good, especially in more aggro games. So if you're able to like swing this against heroes that don't want to block, Ninja, Ranger, like Azalea, stuff like that, you're able to get back quite a bit of value with this card, and it's tutorable, so it's even better. If you're able to get your Spirit of Arena off, also you just gain another action point, so you don't have
hmm
to actually use your soul to gain the go again. You'll just like have an action point, or you can use the action point for something else. It really just depends on what you're trying to do. So it also is very good into the Raiden plan, just getting you insane value off your sword. The last card is a piece of armor that is pretty recent, Warband of Bologna. So as if this hero didn't have enough L's,
Yeah,
it's now taken one for the head spot.
are we completely L'd out right now? I think we are.
Well, you
We're
have
close.
Iron Song versus.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're L'd out for sure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's just a matter of you could play different boots. You could play like snaps. It's not 100% what boot. Maybe we'll get a Legendary Warrior boot, another one, because it would be Valiant Dynamo would be the first one, right? So
Yep.
could be a second one. But Warband of Bologna is quite nice because it essentially allows you a get out of jail free card on a hand that has no charge. And this was one of the main issues with Bolton before. that those are just stupendously dead hands. So even if you grabbed tempo with like a nice Lumina turn and you draw like a no charge
Mm-hmm.
hand, you just a little bit on the dead in the water side here. So what you could
Yeah.
do here is you get to block for two, so you get two extra health for this card
That is
also.
rare for a headpiece. I will say, like a temper headpiece, where you get
Yeah,
just two free block and it's not blade break. That's kind of
and you
rare.
still get to use it.
Yeah.
Like it is kind of rare here, but it's specifically Light Warrior for Bolton right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the next time you attack, you could charge your hero soul. If it's a yellow card, you could draw a card, go again. And the key is you're still able to use like the Bolton ability. So if they block with like an attack action and you gain +1 on your attack, then you could just gain go again and go on your merry way. So it provides another way of helping you, and you might have like a vigor, sorry, a courage token or something to already give you the +1. So sometimes you don't even need it. It just gives you a way to charge. So it's quite good for those hands that really gum up your turn here. So in general, I think Bolton is in a really good spot. With heavy hitters, he might even get more support
Yeah.
indirectly
That's the
because
exciting part. Just the unknown
yeah,
of what he could get, right?
because he is a warrior. He is able to have armor and also be quite aggressive. I do consider him an aggressive deck, but he also gets to have the side piece of being able to go saber in your like sideboard. So he is quite good into brute, into guardian, like the more defensive decks that you could just like chip down. He could race ninjas pretty well, mech pretty well. Azuri, same kind of idea, but he definitely has some awkward matchups. Azalea being the one that people have probably seen on stream. We're going to go into next, but Azalea and then decks like Dory are pretty awkward because they can essentially just like swing back and get value, and they have such high armor that it's quite hard to deal with like the onslaught of kind of effects and value they can get off of it because like generally Bolton doesn't have to block, but generally you kind of want to block with one or two cards unless you have the nuts. And then Kano is a bit of a menace. Obviously, winning the last battle around Orlando, you're gonna have to now start devoting slots. So if you follow Yuki and Ellie's list that you can see on YouTube that had no slots, you're gonna
Yeah.
have to start like carving out some slots for Kano because I don't think everyone saw the battle around Orlando 2 in top 8 ended up winning pretty I think it won against AB Zero Hero just like on turn one or something like that. So
Yeah, that
point
can
is,
happen. Yeah.
yeah, Bolton is pretty well positioned. You have to change the deck about check. You have to change the deck a little bit for the upcoming meta, but he is pretty well positioned. So moving on to our next
Cool.
hero.
Yeah, the one that you kind of alluded to, Azalea. So Azalea has been pretty hot lately. She's a very good deck currently in the meta. She is an aggressive deck that also has a ton of disruption in Red in the Ledger, ton of stuff, and you can get that thing out 6 times if you run codexes. So she has a lot of tools that can actually be tailored quite well to most of the decks in the meta currently. So she has the tools currently at her disposal to be very good. And in the next set, we're going to see some more Brute. We're going to see some more Guardian. Traditionally, Disruption is really good into Brute. Aggressive decks are great into Brute. They don't really have many tools to combat aggressive decks, unfortunately. And into Guardians or into more defensive decks, she has Dominate. So I think she has a very good tool set to tackle the upcoming decks in the next set. But we did see a new spoiler for her, which was actually probably one of the best arrows she has to date now. Judge, Jury, and Executioner. It reads Legendary Azalea Specialization. You can only have one of these cards in the deck, so
God.
you can't get 6 of these, unfortunately, like you can to Red in the Ledger. But that's, there's a reason for that because the effect reads if this has an aim counter, it gets when this hits a hero, they discard all but one card from their hand. So imagine dominating this card and then they block with one card or none at all, and then they discard everything down to one card. It's a doozy. So keyword, you need to have an aim counter on this card. So of course you can use the good old crow's nest. You can Azalea this card. You can knock it. Azalea it in. Use your crow's nest. Give a name counter. That's one way to do it. But you only have one in the deck. So if you do use cards like Codex to bring this card back from the grave, unfortunately that comes back face down. So you cannot use your crow's nest to add the aim counter on the card. So at this point there aren't many ways to accomplish getting this card off 4 times. There is a buff, I believe, that buffs for 3, and as an aim counter, it was, what
Point the
was
tip.
that? Point the tip, was that the name? So it's a
I think it's
0
point the
for
tip.
3. On a face up arrow, you add an aim counter. So you could potentially do something like that. There is another card that does help you get aim counters, and that is the Sandscour Great Bow. So you could potentially look at some funny things with this weapon. It's unfortunate you have to get rid of the good old Death Dealer to play this card, but it does accomplish what you're trying to do. So the Sandscour Great Bow actually allows you to add the aim counter onto um, Judge, Jury, Executioner, sorry, that name slipped my mind, without needing to use Zalia's ability and then add it with the Crow's Nest. So if you have it in your hand, you can use this weapon, play it into Arsenal face up, and then give the aim counter. So some good synergy there. But yeah, to date, that's all we know about Azalea's new cards. That's the only expansion slot we've seen so far with Azalea specialization. So we don't know if there's going to be more, but she got a crazy card. I think she's going to be well positioned into the new heroes that we see in heavy hitters, and of course the new card is just gravy on the on the top of the
Yeah.
cake. So
Gravy. It's gravy on the top of the cake. I
that's
will
right.
add that
Yeah.
Sandscour did get used with New Horizons. Now that Lexi is gone, everyone who's got that New Horizon just itching to
Mm,
do its job here can use the New Horizon Sandscour and try to get some more value out of that.
yep,
And
that is true.
it is worth noting at the beginning of most metas, usually the aggro decks are the ones that take hold because the other decks are usually a little bit slower to adjust to the meta and the game plan. And so, especially early on, I think Azalea is in quite good position being an aggro deck
Hmm.
with disruption. So you're able to kind of toolbox your arrows depending on what you think might come out. And so she's probably the most flexible compared to some of the other aggro decks out there. So it's kind of another reason why Azalea might be a good idea to practice now and see what your meta looks like and bring her out.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to the next hero, your bread and butter.
Bravo, the showstopper. You know what? Every set we're just like, he's finally good, but like,
He's always good.
I swear, this is the set. He's gonna
Yeah.
be even better, but even bigger than that.
Hmm.
But the point is that I think Bravo is one of those heroes that rewards a lot of reps, and there's a lot of micro decisions that you can get advantages from. And he's a hero that rewards your ability to block correctly and then determine the points in the game which you want to go aggressive, right? So all that
Hmm.
said and done, it's nice to get those reps in now so that when this comes out, when the heavy hitters comes out and these guardian cards you want to add to the deck, you already have a nice baseline of playing Bravo in the first place. Now, as far as the cards go, we'll
Yeah.
look at a couple that I think might be kind of interesting here. The first is the Thumpening.
The
I really
thumping.
like this card because I like to say the Thumpening,
Hmm.
and
That's the only reason. Next.
that's really the only reason. So the problem with this card beforehand is the only way that was legitimate in this deck to buff this card was Pummel, because you didn't really want to run any of the emerging whatever power dominance doesn't even really
Yeah.
do much, but
I'll also just mention
power
that the reason you want to buff it is to gain the built-in dominate effect of this card.
built-in dominate. Yeah, because you save 2 resources too, right? Because you don't have to Bravo this, so you all you have to do is make the power greater than the base, which is quite it seems easy on the surface, but it is a 4 cost attack. So a lot of the things like nimbilism it's not gonna work,
Hmm.
right?
You
So
have to
you have
use
to work a little bit harder.
slogism is the one you got to
You have
use.
to use slogism, which is it's getting real expensive. And
Yeah.
what I'm gonna see at the beginning of the set is a lot more either buffs or
Hmm.
cheaper ways to buff all cards. Uh, this is not one of them,
That was
but
not one of them. Yeah.
this was not one of them. Talking about like put your money where your mouth is, and then other cards that essentially you can run pretty easily and get a cheap buff to be able to give Thump a nice effect. And I think the red and the blue will be nice to look at and experiment with. I think
Hmm.
specifically the blue might be just like to take one of the more like bad, like debilitate or something like that. Take one of the really bad blues that you don't really want to play and replace it with like a blue Thump.
Hmm.
Might be quite good. So
Because
the next card we're gonna look at,
blue is what, 4 for 4? Comes in for
yeah,
4,
four for
right? So
four,
if you
yeah,
buff it to 7
for
with
like
the,
7,
yeah,
yeah,
it's not bad. Yeah.
yeah. Like you could block it with like a sink in the arsenal, but it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And for a blue too, Test of
Exactly.
Strength is one of the other spoilers here. Generic 4 blocks, so it might take the place of like a Fate Foreseen if you're running something like that. possibly like sigils. And when this defends, essentially you clash with the attacking hero, clash being the new mechanic, and the winner gets a gold token.
Mm-hmm.
The class essentially is reveal the top card. You're playing
Good
war. You're
old
playing
gold
war with
token.
your opponent here.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
nice
that's
thing about
exactly
war
it. Yeah.
is that you've got a lot of big attacks, crippling crush. You've got Starstruck, 11s,
Yeah.
10s, spinals for 9. So
Even your
you've got quite
blues, even your blues are going to
your
be
blues are
stronger than
hot. Yeah.
most of like Azalea's
You've
arrows,
got
right?
yeah, blue Macho Grande, blue Thunderquake.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a lot of stuff, and getting the gold is such a nice upside because that gold is essentially worth one free recycle with one pitch floating. So we're gonna look at the
True.
gold a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
Gold is only
That's a
good for
tiny
two
card.
things.
There we go.
Gold is only good as an additional cost. So if you can use gold instead of resources to pay for stuff, which is fine, which you can do with one of the other spoilers that came out, one of the two cost spoilers. So it's essentially two resources in that kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can actually pay. You could pay two to draw a card. Bravos runs like 40 blues, and some of his super dead hands. You see the gold, you just turn a blue into a different card, and you get a pitch floating.
Mm-hmm.
Like that seems pretty good. Like maybe you draw like a crippling crush or something. Pitch two more blues, your all four blue dead hand turned into crippling an arsenal card if you want.
Mm-hmm. That can
Like
make
it's
Spinal off of a Seismic Surge token just cost 3, basically.
yep,
Right? You get a 2
yep.
discount on that Spinal. That's pretty strong.
Now you're thinking like a Bravo, Rob. And the key is I want everyone to understand that gold is not just for additional costs. You could just run the gold. Yeah, draw my turn 0. You pitch two reds, draw yourself a card. Like there's heroes that if you run enough blues, just becomes a free recycle. So
Mm-hmm.
the value you can get off like a red 4 block card is actually quite good. So I think Bravo's in a really good position to take advantage of the new heavy hitter cards just off the spoilers alone. I can't wait to see what other kind of buffs and stuff they're going to be running. But he also is with Ice gone, one of the only reliable
Mm,
disruption heroes at the moment, obviously,
yeah.
left because Azalea is super fringe disruption.
Yeah, she's
Like,
not that reliable. Like, you've got Dominate on a stick with Bravo, but Azalea has to kind of line some things up, right?
yes, correct. So pretty good with that. You can run a more aggressive Bravo build and just like shut down like Ninja, shut down Azalea. Like there's decks that you just do quite well with. So very
Yeah.
good option if you want to be practicing an off-season hero.
And it's precisely those decks where your test of strength might actually be more effective because they run a lot of small attacks, a lot of many go again attacks, and so at least this is pretty much
Yeah,
guaranteed to hit into those decks. So you're going to be getting gold basically every time you play this card.
yeah,
And
it's true.
nice 4 block too. You can block any kind of, you know, anything that has
Use
a
armor.
breakpoint really. Yeah.
Yeah, add some armor. And the key is that into aggro, you don't want to have a turn without disruption. And so this will just give you gold, which helps you again not miss a turn of
Cycle into
disruption.
those disruptive cards. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, the next hero we've got, or I won't say hero because this is more of like a class. So Katsu and Fi are the ones we want to lump together in this next section. Ninja, in general. We've seen the power of Fi at the last World event. Fi is an insane deck right now. The caveat, though, is that he's got more Living Legend points than Katsu does. So
Yeah.
Fi, his lifespan has been shortened by quite a bit by winning Worlds, but basically Katsu's got a longer lifespan than Fi does at present time. Katsu can be stronger because he has insane turns with Bonds of Ancestry. He can comb together combos that Fi can't really get to in one turn, but he's a lot more, I should say, a lot less reliable. Reliable, I guess is the wrong word, but he can't comb that combo together every turn. But well, as Fi, he can get consistent damage turn to turn, turn by turn. He's got a lot more poke as well with his Phoenix
Yeah.
Flame. So
Double strike
there are pros
possibly.
and cons. Yeah, pros and cons to both decks for sure. But they're both equally well positioned, I think, into this next meta, quote unquote, with heavy hitters. Great into Brute, fine into Guardians. It depends on who gets the disruption. If Guardian can get disruption first, or if draw your Art of War first with 5. But it's still a very strong deck into Guardian. And yeah, just aggression, I think, is going to be the name of the game, at least early on until things get figured out. So these decks, Katsu and Fi, are going to be insanely strong early on until maybe a Bravo deck gets made that can really stomp on these decks, but stomp I should say. But you know, I think they're going to be really well positioned in the meta. I don't know if you have anything to add for Katsu or Fi specifically.
No, like Fi is quite reliant on like big Art of War pouncing Link's hands to like get some real like 20 to 30 damage turns off. Katsu obviously bonds. Art of War is also quite nice. Double bonds is usually double triple, triple if you could do it. Double bonds turns to really get the blood pumping there. So they
Yep.
rely on like slightly different things, but I think their armor is similar and their entire play styles can be similar. So I say both of them can also go defensive. Like Katsu running Flick Flag can run sinks, Fi can run sinks, reinforces, stuff like that. So
Yep.
I think there is good reason to play both of these. There could be a Guardian or Warrior or Brute that like shits on both of these in heavy hitters, but at the moment they're not a bad idea to practice at least in the opening week for like roads, like road to Nats season before anyone has things to figure out. Quite a
Yep.
good deck to bring.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. The Flick Flax and Katsu are going to be like the bane of any Bravo's existence if you can get off some really good like 4 block into like a 5 block combo card. So, yeah, really really strong. Although, Fi is not so lucky. He doesn't have the Flick Flax, but he can run
Yeah.
D reacts if he wants to. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, he
Ninja.
just doesn't have combo, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, of course, yeah. All right, we've got I think one more here to talk about. Uh,
Now this one was tricky for me
yeah,
because I'll have an honorable mention. I think people should put some more reps into Prism because of this weapon, and I'm not saying she's back to
I'll
like
show
her
the weapon.
former glory or
Oh,
anything,
that's a big
but
card.
it's a very
There you
big.
go.
It's gonna have a big
It's
effect
a
on the
big
Prism
glow.
deck.
Okay.
Everyone was just waiting for Prism to have an actual
Some
majestic
support.
weapon,
Yeah.
right? Because she didn't really have one yet. It was just the Celestial Fury, which is I don't know. It's a card, right?
Yep.
So we were really just waiting for a majestic weapon for her, and we're going back to yellow cards. So of
Yeah.
course with Luminaris, it's just a different Luminaris. So it's a yellow into pitch, attack actions with Herald gain, Herald in
Yeah.
the name you play each turn, and your
It
first Angel
is
attack can go again.
the first of each. So you can't just snowball this like the old Luminaris where you just keep getting go again. It's really just the
Yeah, not
the first of each. So you can
you
get
can't just
at
Herald
best
Herald.
yeah, at best 3
Yeah,
cards, per turn with this.
you can't just pitch a yellow and War Tude or like War Tude
Yeah,
something.
or erudition into 2 more heralds and just keep pumping them out, right?
Yeah, that would be fun, huh? But
Mm-hmm.
the key is it does give you a lot more recourse against the aggressive decks to be able to race a little bit easier because the key is that if you're able to string together enough impactful turns with your heralds and your angels have ward 4, so they essentially just gain you the life. And so if you're able to get enough cards in soul, transform your figments into angels whenever you want because it is instant speed, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the here for a sec.
Yep.
I want to double check.
Oh, one
Yeah, so it's
sec.
once per
Once
turn
per
instant.
turn instant. Yeah.
Yeah, so you essentially get ward on a stick if you're able to transform your angels. There is a world where you can snowball really early, and the aggressive decks are not really able to keep up with the onslaught, essentially. But the problem I have is she still starts at 32 health,
Mm-hmm.
and 8 health is a lot of health, especially into like an aggro deck. I also think this doesn't really help her chances into Guardian super well, and that's going to be and a Brute for that matter. Two of the classes that are coming out in heavy hitters. I think her Warrior matchup would be pretty good, but as far as her her Brute slash Guardian,
Mm-hmm.
especially Bravo, it might be pretty awkward starting at 32 and not having a lot of armor to your name either. So
Yeah.
I think you had Iris to reality. You can try to run a hybrid build. I just don't know if you have enough space to run enough cards to be good in that matchup. So it's gonna be a little bit tricky to find the balance. But I think this new weapon at least gives her some recourse with the more aggressive route because you're able to have go again and put out like easily 15 plus damage with some board state, right? Trying to
Mm-hmm.
get at least some semblance of a board state. Nothing like you could do before, but
Yep.
beggars can't be choosers. So I think it's also the surprise factor. I don't think people really know how to play against New Prism because they really don't
Mm-hmm.
practice against it, and
That's
it
very
might be
fair.
a situation where you might be able to sneak some in there. So I think I'm gonna put Prism on here because at least if you don't end up wanting to play her, at least you'll know what she does. So when you play
Yeah,
against her, you won't just get caught with your pants down kind of thing.
that's a good point. Yeah. And
I will
with
say,
this
like,
new yellow synergy coming out, there's one more card that we could talk about briefly.
oh yeah, Light of
We
Souls,
got
a
this
funny card.
Fable that no one played.
Yeah, because it came out too late.
Yeah.
So it's just like a yellow card, and you pitch it, you reveal the top and yellow, and it just kind of expedites the.
hmm
So it's a yellow, so it works for your weapon, so it allows you to get that ability. But it also gets a card in Soul to be able to transform your Figment, right? So if you go back to the
Prism's
Prism,
ability.
the Prism Hero card,
Damn.
yeah. So it's the bottom. So you banish a card from your Soul, awakens a target Figment, so you get the ability to awaken, attack, and you don't get the Herald obviously, unless you actually, you don't get to search for your
Unless
Figment
it's
unless you hit
a
the Herald.
unless it's a yellow
But
herald that you put in from the top of your deck, potentially
yeah,
it could
there
be.
there and there's a lot of things that could hit. Again, the key is like I don't know how many heralds you're gonna be able to get hit into like Guardian. Like you get the footsteps, sure, but you go Herald, go again, footsteps, get your action point, and then
hmm
try to Herald again and hope they don't have a popper. So it's really kind of mixed. I'm not too sure if she could overcome that, but she is quite interesting with that weapon. Instead of just like dead in the water, I
hmm
think the weapon makes her like a lot
More
less
playable for sure.
grindy, yeah,
Yeah.
more playable. That like you've got another option. So I'm kind of excited to see where that comes.
hmm
Um,
Yeah.
I do have a small honorable mention for Azuri. I Because Azuri has been performing quite well lately, but I think Azuri's matchups into the like Guardian, like Azuri's quite. She could be aggressive, but her aggression is not nearly as good as like a ninja or something like
hmm
that. But I think her key is that she can also block and has disruption. But heroes that can block quite well. So like there are Guardian decks. There might be new Brute decks, especially Brute just being able to possibly remove her defenses. She just have some like high power cards, but 6 is kind of the biggest you get.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas Brute Guardian and possibly Warrior, like an attack action Warrior or something that comes out, could have something more. So like she can be in an okay spot, but I think right now it was mainly just like Icelander was holding her down,
hmm
and so she could come up and people want to play her, and she has disruption. So against like a lot of those aggro decks, you just have disruption. You can create frailties against Ninja. You can like take cards with Shakedown or CNC stuff like that. I just don't know if putting a whole bunch of reps into her specifically for upcoming season is necessarily better than any of these other heroes. So
hmm
that's why it's honorable mention, but not particularly in these top five. Oh,
Yep.
I could be
That's
completely
fair.
wrong. Who knows?
But we could be wrong about any of these because who knows? But
E- These
oh
are just ideas
yeah,
and things. So
exactly.
with that, hopefully everyone enjoyed the content. If you just like this content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And with that, from wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.